I'm 74 years old, and for most of my life, I learned how to take up as little space as possible. That didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly, quietly. You shrink a little every year until one day you don't recognize yourself anymore. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and for 36 years, I was somebody's wife, somebody's mother, somebody's solution, never somebody's priority. After my husband, Frank, passed away, I told myself things would get easier. No more compromising, no more walking on eggshells. But grief doesn't free you. It just hands you over to the next version of survival. That version was my son. Lucas was my only child. I raised him alone for a long stretch while Frank worked double shifts. And later, after Frank got sick, it was mostly just me and the boy. I cooked, I cleaned, I worked part-time jobs. I skipped vacations. I skipped dreams. I told myself that was love. And then Lucas grew up, got married, and somehow I became optional. His wife, Vanessa, entered our lives like a storm, wearing a smile. Pretty, sharp, always polite in public, always cutting in private. The kind of woman who never raises her voice, but still manages to make you feel small. At first, I tried. Lord knows I tried. I brought meals even when nobody asked. I babysat even when my back hurt. I handed over money when Lucas said things were tight. Even though my pension barely stretched to the end of the month, I told myself, this is what good mothers do. They lived in a nice house, modern, open space, lots of light. Ironically, I always felt like I was blocking the sun just by standing there. Vanessa had rules. Shoes here, bags there. Oh, Eleanor, we don't use that brand. Oh, Eleanor, the kids eat organic. Oh, Eleanor, you don't have to come so often. And Lucas? He nodded along like a bobblehead. The night everything changed was supposed to be a celebration. Lucas got promoted at work. Big deal. Good money. Fancy title. They invited friends, coworkers, even neighbors I'd never met. I wore my nicest dress. The navy one Frank always said made my eyes look younger. I even curled my hair. I arrived early, like always, with a homemade lemon cake, because Vanessa's desserts always tasted like sadness and sugar-free lies. She barely looked at it. Just put it anywhere, she said, already turning away. I sat quietly on the corner of the couch, nursing a glass of water, listening to laughter bounce off walls I didn't belong to. Lucas barely looked my way. Every time I tried to speak, the conversation rolled right over me, like I wasn't there. Then came the toast. Vanessa stood up, glass raised, smile sharp enough to draw blood. I just want to say, she began, that life is all about efficiency. Some people add value, and some people, she laughed lightly, just take up space. The room chuckled. I felt my face burn. She looked straight at me. Lucas laughed too. Not loud, not cruel, just enough. That laugh did something to me. Not the dramatic kind of break you see in movies. No screaming, no tears, just a quiet crack, like an old bone finally giving up. I smiled. I even nodded. Years of practice made it easy. Inside, something died. I went home that night and sat alone at my kitchen table, long after the clock hit midnight. Frank's old chair across from me, was empty, just like it had been for years. I thought about how many dinners I'd cooked for Lucas, how many nights I stayed up waiting for him, how many times I defended him, protected him, chose him over myself. And suddenly, I understood something I'd never allowed myself to say out loud. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as furniture, useful when needed, annoying when noticed. That night, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop. I'd been saving quietly for years, little by little, skipping luxuries, saying no to myself so others could say yes. A habit that dies hard. I searched places I'd never dared to consider before. Coastal towns, quiet streets, sunrises instead of apologies. I didn't tell Lucas. I didn't tell Vanessa. I didn't tell anyone, because for the first time in my life, this wasn't about being good. It was about being free. By morning, I had found it. A house. Large, bright, far away. Over 3,000 kilometers from the place where I'd learned how to disappear. I closed the laptop, poured myself a cup of coffee, and felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Peace. Not the loud kind, not the fake kind, the kind that comes when you finally stop waiting for permission to live. And that was only the beginning. Once I bought that house, something strange happened. I didn't feel excited the way people usually do. No jumping up and down, no calling friends, no champagne. I felt calm. Like my soul had been holding its breath for decades and finally exhaled. The next few weeks passed quietly, too quietly almost. Lucas didn't call much. Vanessa didn't call at all, which honestly wasn't new. If I didn't initiate, I didn't exist, so I stopped initiating. That was my first small rebellion. I started packing slowly, one drawer at a time, one memory at a time. When you've lived in the same place for over 40 years, everything has a story attached to it. Some sweet, some heavy, some sharp enough to still draw blood. Frank's sweaters wet first. I folded them neatly, even though they still smelled like him. That mix of old cologne and sawdust from his weekend projects. I held one against my face longer than I meant to. "You'd be proud of me," I whispered to an empty room. "I'm finally choosing myself." Then came the photo albums. Lucas as a baby, naked as the day he was born, screaming like he already knew life was unfair. Lucas on his first bike. Lucas graduating high school. Me standing on the edge of every photo, half cut out, holding the camera or someone's coat. Funny how mothers are everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I didn't tell Lucas I was moving. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I was angry. Because, for once, I didn't want to explain myself. Every time I tried to explain my feelings in the past, I got labeled. Too sensitive, too dramatic, too emotional. I will be proud of me. Embrace every hard moment possible. Anytime you reach out to me, I'm here. Sometimes I call you a prisoner. Sometimes I try to make you feel better. But most want to help you too. I'm finally choosing myself. Every time I do. So this time, I chose silence. The movers were scheduled for a Thursday morning. The house echoed as boxes piled up. My little kitchen, where I'd cooked thousands of meals, looked bare. No smells, no warmth, just clean counters and memories clinging to the walls. The night before I left, Lucas finally called. "Hey, Mom," he said, casual as ever. "Vanessa wants to know if you can watch the kids this weekend. We're exhausted." I looked around my half-empty living room. "I can't," I said. There was a pause. A confused one. "Why not?" "I won't be here." Another pause. Longer this time. "What do you mean you won't be here?" I could almost hear Vanessa leaning in, listening. "I'm moving," I said calmly. Silence. "Moving where?" Lucas finally asked. "Far." "How far?" "Far enough." He laughed like it was a joke. Like I was being cute. "Mom, come on. You can't just disappear." That word again. Disappear. I smiled to myself. "I can," I said. "And I am." He started asking questions then. Rapid fire. "Where? Why? When did you decide this? Why didn't you tell us?" I didn't answer most of them. "I raised you," I said quietly. I earned the right to make my own decisions. Vanessa took the phone. "Eleanor," she said, that fake sweet tone sliding right in. "You're being impulsive. At your age, big changes aren't practical." "At my age?" I replied. "I finally know what I want." She scoffed. "And what's that?" "Peace." She didn't like that answer. The next morning, I left. I watched my old house disappear in the rearview mirror. No tears, no regrets. Just a strange lightness in my chest. The drive was long. Endless highways, gas stations, cheap coffee, motels that smelled like old carpet and freedom. Somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like someone's mother and started feeling like a woman again. When I arrived, the ocean greeted me first. I cried then, not from sadness, from relief. The house was bigger than I needed. White walls, tall windows, a garden begging for attention. It felt like possibility. The first few weeks were quiet. I unpacked slowly, painted walls, bought plants, learned the names of birds I'd never seen before. I started waking up early just to watch the sunrise with a cup of coffee and my own thoughts. Nobody needed anything from me, and that was intoxicating. Lucas didn't visit. Vanessa didn't call. At first, I waited. Then I stopped. I met new people. A neighbor named Claire, sharp-tongued and kind-hearted. A local gardener named Earl, who taught me how to bring roses back from the dead. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since before Frank got sick. One afternoon, I sold my first painting at a small gallery. I laughed out loud. Me, a 74-year-old woman, selling art. Who would have thought? Then one evening, my phone rang. Lucas. His voice sounded different, thinner. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ocean. "For once," I said, "I agree." And as I listened to him struggle to find the right words, I realized something important. Leaving had changed more than my address. It had shifted the balance. And whatever was coming next would not be on their terms anymore. Lucas didn't speak right away. I could hear his breathing through the phone, that uneven kind that tells you someone's pacing a room they don't own anymore. The ocean behind me rolled in steady waves, calm and unbothered. Funny how nature keeps moving, no matter how messy human feelings get. "Mom," he finally said, "Vanessa thinks you're punishing us." I laughed, not loud, just a soft little sound that surprised even me. "Punishing you?" I repeated. "No, sweetheart, I'm just done sacrificing myself." He didn't like that. "That's not fair," he said quickly. "You left without telling us. You embarrassed Vanessa." There it was. Not "you hurt us," not "we miss you." You embarrassed my wife. I closed my eyes and let that sink in. "Lucas," I said slowly, "do you know how many times I've been embarrassed?" Silence. How many dinners I sat through where Vanessa made jokes about my cooking, about my clothes, about how I hover too much, about how I take up space. "That was just her humor," he muttered. "No," I corrected him. "That was cruelty dressed up as a joke. And you laughed every time." He inhaled sharply. "I didn't realize it hurt you that bad." That sentence right there told me everything. Not "I'm sorry," not "I should have defended you," just "I didn't realize." "I know," I said. "That's the problem." The call ended without resolution. No yelling, no tears. Just two people realizing they were standing on opposite sides of a bridge that had already burned. After that, days passed. Then weeks. I settled into my routine. Morning coffee on the terrace. I learned how to bake bread just because I wanted to, not because anyone expected it. For the first time in my life, my time belonged to me. Then the text messages started. Vanessa first. "We don't understand why you're acting like this." I didn't reply. "The kids keep asking where you went." Still nothing. "Lucas is really stressed." I stared at the phone and felt something shift inside me. That familiar guilt tried to crawl back in. The voice that said, "You're the mother. Fix it, smooth it over." I turned the phone face down. That night, Claire came over with a bottle of wine. "You look lighter," she said, handing me a glass. "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Good," she said. "That's what happens when you stop carrying other people's baggage." A week later, Lucas showed up. No warning, no call. Just a car pulling into my driveway like he still had the right. I watched from the window as he stepped out, looking around like he'd landed on another planet. His shoulders slumped when he saw the house, the garden, the ocean. He knocked. I took my time answering. When I opened the door, he froze. "You look different," he said. "So do you," I replied. He stepped inside slowly, eyes scanning everything. The art on the walls, the fresh flowers, the space. "This place is huge," he muttered. "Yes," I said simply. "It is." We sat at the table. I poured lemonade, the same kind I'd been making for years, except this time it was for me. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "Good," I replied, "because I don't fight anymore." He rubbed his face. "Vanessa's struggling. The kids are a lot. Money's tight." I waited. Nothing else came. No apology. No accountability. Just a list of problems that needed solving. "Lucas," I said gently, "why are you really here?" He looked up, eyes red. "Because everything feels harder without you." There it was. Not "I miss you." Not "I treated you wrong." Just life is inconvenient without your labor. I leaned back in my chair. For 30 years, I said, I showed up for you, no matter how tired I was. I defended you when no one else did. I gave without being asked. And when your wife disrespected me, you chose silence. He swallowed hard. I didn't know how to stand up to her. I know, I said, and I paid the price for your fear. Tears slid down his face then. Real ones. I messed up, he whispered. I studied him, the boy I raised, the man he became. The space between those two versions was wide and painful. I'm not asking you to fix the past, I said, but I am done pretending it didn't hurt. He nodded slowly. What do you want from me? He asked. The question felt strange. No one had asked me that before. I want respect, I said. Not guilt, not obligation, respect. He nodded again. I don't know if Vanessa can. I raised my hand. This isn't about Vanessa anymore. He went quiet. You're welcome here, I continued, but only if you understand something. What? I'm not coming back, and I'm not shrinking myself to fit into your life ever again. He looked around one last time, then back at me. I think, he said quietly, I finally understand. As he left that evening, I stood alone on my terrace, watching the sun sink into the ocean. I didn't know if my son would change, but I knew one thing for sure. I already had. And whatever happened next would be built on truth, not sacrifice. After Lucas drove away, the house didn't feel empty. That surprised me. For most of my life, silence meant abandonment. It meant I had failed as a mother, a wife, a woman. Silence used to scare me into action, calling, apologizing, fixing things that weren't mine to fix. But that night, silence felt earned. I sat on the terrace with my feet up, the ocean breathing slow and steady like it always had. No one needed me. No one was waiting on me. No one was mad because dinner wasn't ready or laundry wasn't folded. And for the first time, that felt peaceful instead of terrifying. The next morning, Earl showed up early, hat crooked like always. You look rested, he said. I slept like someone with nothing to prove, I replied. He chuckled. That's the best kind. We worked in the garden for hours, pulling weeds, turning soil, planting new rose bushes I'd ordered from a nursery 3 states away. Expensive ones. The kind I'd always told myself were too much. Funny how once you stop shrinking, too much starts sounding like freedom. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Lucas, I didn't jump for it. I wiped my hands, took a sip of water, then checked the message. I've been thinking about what you said. No panic, no guilt, no urgency. I replied when I felt like it. Thinking is a good start. Another message came an hour later. Vanessa wants to talk to you. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The old me would have said yes instantly, smoothed things over, made it easier for everyone else, swallowed the discomfort so the family could pretend again. The new me took a breath. I'm open to a conversation, I typed, but only if it's respectful. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared, appeared again. She feels like you abandoned the family. I laughed out loud this time. Abandoned? Like I'd vanished in the middle of the night, instead of walking out after years of being treated like furniture. I didn't abandon anyone, I wrote. I removed myself from disrespect. That conversation ended right there. Days passed. Then something unexpected happened. Vanessa didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't send passive-aggressive messages through Lucas. And that silence, it told me everything I needed to know. People who benefit from your silence hate it when you finally find your voice. One afternoon, I drove into town to pick up paint supplies. The clerk at the art store recognized me. "You're the Phoenix lady," she said. I smiled. "Guess I am." "That painting sold the same night it went up," she said. "Someone asked if you're doing more." Something fluttered in my chest. For decades, my identity had been Lucas's mom, or the helpful one, or the one who doesn't complain. Now I was becoming the woman who paints. I signed up for a small local exhibit that afternoon. No permission asked, no one consulted. That night, Claire came over again. "Vanessa blocked me," she announced cheerfully. I raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations?" "She didn't like that I told her you weren't cruel," Claire said. "She prefers the villain version, easier to manage." We clinked glasses. A week later, Lucas came back, alone. No surprise this time. He called first. "Can I visit?" he asked carefully. "Yes," I said, "for coffee. Not dinner, not overnight. Coffee." Boundaries felt good in my mouth. He arrived quieter than before, less defensive, more tired. "I started therapy," he said after we sat down. I didn't react. I let him keep going. "My therapist asked me why I laughed that night," he continued. "Why I didn't stop Vanessa." I waited. "Turns out," he said softly, "I've been afraid of disappointing people my whole life. I just picked the wrong person to protect." That hit something deep. I looked at him, really looked. Not as my child, not as my responsibility, just as a grown man finally seeing himself clearly. "I can't undo what I allowed," he said, "but I don't want to be that man anymore." I nodded. "I hear you," I said, "but hearing isn't the same as changing." "I know," he replied. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for time." End. That was new. I sipped my coffee. "Time I can give," I said. "Access is what you'll have to earn." He swallowed hard and nodded. We talked about neutral things after that. The garden, the weather, my painting, his job. No emotional dumping, no pressure. When he left, he hugged me, light, respectful. "Thank you for not shutting the door," he said. "I didn't," I replied. "I just stopped holding it open." Later that evening, I got a message from Vanessa. One sentence. "I never meant to hurt you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "Impact matters more than intention." No response came after that. And honestly, I didn't need one. Weeks passed and life kept blooming around me. The roses took root. The garden expanded. My paintings started selling. I made friends who knew me only as Eleanor. Not someone's mom. Not someone's backup plan. One afternoon, standing in my garden with dirt under my nails, it finally hit me. I hadn't lost my family. I had lost my role as their emotional dumping ground. And that loss felt like a win. That night, I wrote in my journal, "I didn't buy a mansion to escape them. I bought it to finally meet myself." And for the first time in decades, I went to bed without guilt following me into sleep. Because the truth was simple and solid. I didn't take up too much space. I had just been living in places too small to hold who I really was. Time does a funny thing when you stop chasing people. Days don't drag anymore. They settle. Morning light started becoming my favorite thing. The way it hit the ocean. The way the roses leaned toward it, like they trusted it. I'd sit with my coffee, wrapped in a cardigan, feeling rich in ways money can't touch. Then reality knocked again. It always does. This time, it was my sister. Margaret hadn't called in years, unless she needed something. A favor. A loan. Someone to clean up a mess she didn't want to face. So when her name popped up on my phone, I already knew. I let it ring twice. "Eleanor," she said fast, breath tight. "I heard you moved." I smiled to myself. "Yes," I said, "I did. Lucas told me," she continued. "You bought a house?" "A mansion," I collected gently. Silence. Then a sharp laugh. "That's funny." "It's not," I replied. "It's real." Her tone shifted. Curious now. Measuring. "How did you afford that?" There it was. "I worked," I said. "I saved. I invested. I lived below my means for decades, while everyone else assumed I was struggling." Another pause. "Well," she said slowly, "I'm proud of you." That sentence should have healed something. It didn't. "Why are you calling, Margaret?" I asked. She sighed dramatically. "Richard's business isn't doing well. We're tight. I thought maybe." "No," I said calmly. "What?" she snapped. "No," I repeated. "I'm not lending money. I'm not rescuing anyone. I'm not fixing things that aren't mine." "You've changed," she said sharply. "Yes," I agreed. "That was the point." She huffed. "Family helps family. Family doesn't ignore pain for 30 years, I replied. "Family doesn't laugh when someone's being humiliated." She went quiet. "You always were sensitive," she muttered. And just like that, the door slammed shut. "I'm not sensitive," I said. "I'm done." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from release. Later that day, Lucas showed up again. Unexpected. This time, Vanessa was with him. I didn't invite her inside right away. She stood there in designer sunglasses, arms crossed, like the world owed her comfort. "Can we talk?" she asked. I studied her for a moment. "Outside," I said. We sat on the terrace. Ocean behind me. Sky wide and endless. She shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't know had money," she started. I raised an eyebrow. "That's your opening?" She flushed. "I mean, I thought you thought I was small," I said plainly. "You treated me like I was disposable." Lucas shifted beside her, uncomfortable. "I apologized," she said quickly. "You acknowledged nothing," I replied. "You minimized, you joked, you waited for me to disappear quietly." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I felt threatened," she admitted finally. "You were always there, always hypeful, and Lucas listened to you. ... That honesty surprised me. "I didn't want competition," she continued. I leaned back, calm as stone. "I was never competing," I said. "I was surviving." She swallowed hard. "I didn't think you'd leave," she said. "I thought you'd just adjust." That word hit deep. Adjust. Like I'd been doing my whole life. "I adjusted for everyone," I said softly, "until there was nothing left of me." Lucas spoke then. "Mom isn't coming back to how things were." Vanessa looked at him sharply. "I know." "No," he said. "You don't." She turned to me. "What do you want from us?" I thought about that. Then I answered honestly. I want peace, I said, and respect. Whether that includes you is up to you. She nodded slowly. I don't know how to be that person yet, she admitted. Then don't pretend, I said. Growth takes work. She stood up. I need time. So do I replied. She left without a hug. That was fine. After they drove off, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. Clear as better. Weeks later, the art show opened. My paintings hung on white walls like pieces of my soul finally allowed to breathe. People stopped, looked, asked questions. One woman stood in front of my Phoenix piece and cried. I feel seen, she whispered. So did I. Lucas came alone, quiet, proud. You did this, he said. So did you. I replied, by letting me go. He smiled sadly. That night, I walked the garden alone. The roses were blooming fuller now, stronger, roots deep in new soil. I thought about how everyone assumed I'd move away and shrink into loneliness. They were wrong. I didn't disappear. I expanded. And for the first time in my life, I knew this truth down to my bones. Anyone who wants a place in my world will have to respect the space I finally claimed. Something strange happens when you stop begging to be understood. People finally start listening, not because they suddenly care more, but because you're no longer available to explain yourself. That's when the apologies show up. Not the clean ones, the messy, half-baked, guilt-soaked ones. They arrived in waves. First came the texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Heard you moved far away. Didn't know you were doing so well. Would love to reconnect. Reconnect. Like we'd ever been connected in the first place. Then came the phone calls. Voicemails mostly. People talking into silence because I wasn't ready to pick up. I didn't realize how much you did for everyone. You were always so strong. We just assumed you were fine. Assumed. That word followed me my whole life like a shadow. I listened to those messages while sitting on my terrace, watching the ocean rise and fall like it had no interest in human drama. And for the first time, I didn't feel obligated to respond. One afternoon, Lucas called again. His voice sounded different, less defensive, more honest. Mom, he said quietly, I'm starting to remember things. Like what? I asked. Like how you'd always wait until everyone ate before you sat down. How you never bought new clothes unless someone else needed something first. How you'd apologize for taking a nap. I closed my eyes. I thought that was just how you were, he continued. I didn't question it. I taught you that, I said gently. By example. There was a long pause. I feel sick about it, he admitted. About laughing that night. About not shutting it down. I know, I replied. But knowing doesn't fix it, he said. No, I agreed. It doesn't. Another silence. Can I come visit again? He asked softly. I considered it. I don't want the old patterns, I said. No minimizing, no jokes, no pretending. I understand, he said. I really do. I believed him, but belief isn't trust wet. Come for a short stay, I said. We'll see. A week later, he arrived alone. No Vanessa this time. He looked around the house like he was seeing me for the first time. "This place feels solid," he said. "It is," I replied. "Because I built it for me." That night we sat outside under the stars. No TV, no distractions, just truth, waiting. "I didn't realize how afraid I was," he said suddenly. "Afraid of what?" I asked. "Of failing," he admitted. "Of not being enough. You always handled everything." I felt small next to that. That confession surprised me. "I wasn't strong because I wanted to be," I said. "I was strong because no one else stepped up." He nodded slowly. "I let Vanessa disrespect you because I didn't want conflict," he said. "And because part of me wanted someone else to be the difficult one instead of me." That one stung. But it was honest. "I don't need you to punish yourself," I said. "I need you to change." "I am trying," he said. "I started therapy." That made me smile. Not because therapy fixes everything, but because it means effort. The next morning, something unexpected happened. My sister showed up. Margaret stood at the gate, suitcase in hand. She looked smaller, older, less polished. "I know I didn't call," she said when I opened the door. "I was afraid you'd say no." I studied her face. 30 years of resentment sat between us like a wall. "What do you want?" I asked. "To see how you live now," she said, "and maybe understand." Lucas looked nervous. I felt calm. "Stay a few days," I said finally, "but understand something." She nodded quickly. "This isn't about fixing the past," I continued. "It's about acknowledging it." She swallowed. "Okay." That first night was tense. Dinner was quiet. Not awkward. Heavy. Years of unsaid things hanging in the air. Afterward, Margaret spoke. "I didn't protect you," she said suddenly. "I chose comfort." I didn't interrupt. "I knew Mom favored me," she continued. "And I liked it. I let it happen." Her voice cracked. "I told myself you were stronger, that you didn't need defending." I leaned back in my chair. "That story helped you sleep," I said calmly. "It nearly destroyed me." She nodded, tears sliding down her face. "I know," she whispered. The truth settled between us. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but honesty. The next few days were uncomfortable and real. Margaret noticed things. How I moved slowly now, not from weakness, but from choice. How I didn't rush to serve anyone. How Lucas cleaned up without being asked. "This is different," she said one morning. "Yes," I replied, "because I am." She looked at the garden. "You look lighter." "I'm not carrying everyone anymore," I said. On the fourth day, she sat beside me outside. "I don't know how to fix what I broke," she said. "You don't," I replied. "You live differently going forward." She nodded. That night, she packed early. "I don't deserve to stay longer," she said. "That's not for me to decide," I replied, "but growth takes time." She hugged me gently, not tightly, respectfully. After she left, the house felt peaceful again. Lucas stayed a bit longer. Before leaving, he hugged me. Really hugged me. "I see you now," he said. "Good," I replied, "because I'm not disappearing again." When I was alone that night, I poured a glass of wine and sat under the moon. I thought about all the apologies that came too late. They didn't erase the past. but they also didn't define my future. Because here's the truth, nobody tells women like me. Healing isn't about being welcomed back. It's about choosing who gets access now. And I was finally choosing myself. People think healing feels loud, like fireworks, like revenge, like someone finally begging on their knees. That's a lie. Real healing is quiet. It feels almost boring at first, because chaos had trained your body to mistake pain for love. The first week after everyone left, I kept waiting for something to go wrong. A phone call, a crisis, someone needing something. Nothing came. Just mornings. Just sunlight crawling across my kitchen floor. Just the sound of birds instead of accusations. And for the first time in my life, peace didn't feel like a break between storms. It felt permanent. I woke up when my body wanted to wake up. Not when someone needed breakfast. Not when someone forgot their wallet. Not when someone needed emotional babysitting. I made coffee slow. Sat outside, wrapped in a sweater. Watched the ocean breathe like it had been doing this long before I was born, and would keep doing it long after I was gone. And something inside me settled. Not happiness, not excitement, something stronger. Safety. That's when I realized how unsafe my life had been before. Not physically, emotionally. Always scanning faces. Always adjusting my tone. Always shrinking so nobody else felt uncomfortable. I'd lived like a guest in my own existence. Now, I owned the damn house. One afternoon, Earl showed up early. "You look rested," he said, handing me pruning shears. "I am," I replied. We worked in the garden without talking much. No pressure to fill silence. That's another thing people don't tell you. Silence is only awkward when someone is hiding. After a while, Earl spoke. "Your families stir up dust," he said carefully. "They do," I agreed. "But you didn't let it choke you this time." "No," I said. "I didn't." He smiled. "That's how you know you're free." That word, free. I used to think freedom meant leaving. Turns out it means staying, but on your own terms. That week, Vanessa sent a message. Just one. Short, cold. "Hope you're happy." I read it once, didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't interested in explaining myself anymore. Silence is a boundary too. Lucas called later. He sounded different again. Calmer. Less like a boy trying to prove something. "We had a long talk," he said. "I figured," I replied. "She's not ready to change," he admitted. "But I am." "That's your work," I said gently. "Not mine." "I know," he said. "I just wanted you to know I chose therapy over pretending." I smiled. That's a good choice. We talked about normal things after that. Weather, books, food. No guilt, no tension. That was new. After the call, I realized something important. I didn't feel responsible for his growth. I was proud of him, but detached, like a parent should be once the child is grown. That detachment felt like relief. The days kept stacking. Simple ones. I painted again. Not for money, not for validation. Just because color still excited me. I cooked meals meant for one, not leftovers of obligation. I laughed more. Soft laughs. the kind that surprise you. One evening, Sarah came over with takeout and wine. She looked around and nodded. "You've settled into yourself," she said. "I stopped performing," I replied. She raised her glass. "That'll do it." We sat under the stars. She asked if I missed them. I thought about it. "I miss who I thought they were," I said, "not who they showed me." She smiled. "That's honest." "I don't hate anyone," I continued. "I just don't make room for disrespect anymore." "That's called maturity," she said. I shook my head. "It's called survival, but finally learned to rest." That night, after she left, I walked the garden alone. The roses were blooming again. Strong, stubborn, unapologetic. They didn't ask permission to take up space. They just did. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who'd flinch at raised voices. The one who'd explain herself to people committed to misunderstanding her. That woman wasn't weak. She was conditioned. And conditioning can be undone. It just takes distance and courage and a willingness to disappoint people who benefited from your silence. A month passed. Then 2. Lucas visited again. Different energy, more grounded. Vanessa didn't come. That wasn't a victory. It was just reality. He stayed for a weekend. We talked. We laughed. No tension. No walking on eggshells. Before leaving, he said something that stuck. "You don't need me anymore," he said softly. I looked at him. "I never needed you," I replied. "I loved you. There's a difference." That understanding changed everything. I felt trust. Trust that I'd be okay no matter what. That night, I sat on my terrace again. Glass of wine, moon high, the ocean steady. I thought about space, how they said I took too much of it, how wrong they were. I hadn't taken enough. Not until now. And here's the truth I learned at the end of all this. A woman doesn't become powerful when people fear her. She becomes powerful when she stops needing approval to exist. I leaned back, breathed deep. Tomorrow, Pearl and I were planting something new. Lavender this time. More room, more roots, more life. And for the first time ever, I wasn't afraid of how big my world had become. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I regret not apologizing, if I regret not chasing them, if I regret choosing distance over family dinners and forced smiles. I always answer the same way. No, not sharp, not bitter, just honest. Because regret comes from acting against yourself. And for the first time in my life, I didn't do that. The mansion doesn't feel like a statement anymore. It feels like home. The kind of home where you don't rehearse conversations in your head before speaking. Where your shoulders drop without you noticing. Where your breath comes easy. Every morning, I walk the garden barefoot. The lavender we planted finally bloomed, soft purple stretching wide like it owns the place. Because it does, just like me. Earl says the garden reflects its caretaker. Plants know when they're wanted, he told me one morning. I smiled. So do women. I don't hear from Vanessa much, and that's okay. Silence used to scare me. Now I understand it. Silence is where truth lives. Lucas calls once a week, sometimes twice. We talk about his work, his therapy, small things. We don't talk about the past much. Not because it's forbidden, but because it doesn't control us anymore. One afternoon, he asked me something unexpected. "Do you forgive her?" he asked quietly. I thought for a long time. "I don't carry anger," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access." He nodded slowly. "I'm learning that. That's the thing people get wrong about forgiveness. They think it's a door. It's not. It's a release. You let go so you can breathe, not so someone else can walk back in." A few weeks later, I hosted a small dinner. Nothing fancy, just Sarah, Earl, a neighbor couple, and me. No tension, no power plays, no jokes at anyone's expense. We ate under string lights. We laughed. I told stories. They listened. Not politely, actually listened. That's when it hit me. I had finally built a family. Not the one I was assigned, the one I chose. That night, after everyone left, I cleaned up slowly. No rush, no resentment, just gratitude. I stood in the doorway, looking at my home, the wide hallways, the open windows, the space, all that space. And I remembered her words. Some mothers-in-law are useful. Others just take up space. I shook my head and laughed. I don't take up space. I create it. So peace, for growth, for dignity. I used to believe my value came from how much I endured, from how much I gave, from how quiet I stayed. But that wasn't strength. That was survival. Strength is choosing yourself, even when it costs you relationships that were built on your silence. Strength is being okay with being misunderstood by people who never tried to understand you. Strength is building a life so full that you no longer beg for room at someone else's table. The woman I was before would have shrunk at that dinner table. She would have apologized for the food, for the space, for existing. That woman is gone, not because she failed, but because she evolved. Sometimes, late at night, I sit outside with a blanket and a glass of wine. I listen to the ocean. I think about the years I spent trying to be small enough to be loved. And I feel something unexpected. Compassion for myself, for how hard I tried, for how long I stayed, for how brave I finally became. If you're listening to my story right now, and something in your chest feels tight, let me tell you this. You are not selfish for wanting peace. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for needing space. The world has a way of telling women, especially older women, that we should fade quietly, smile politely, accept scraps. I didn't, and you don't have to either. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop explaining yourself and start building a life that doesn't require permission. I built mine, brick by brick, boundary by boundary, choice by choice. And if you've made it this far, maybe part of you is ready to build yours too. So if this story meant something to you, if it gave you courage, comfort, or clarity, take a second, hit subscribe, because there are more stories like this. Stories about dignity, about strength, about women who finally choose themselves. And maybe, just maybe, the next story will feel like it was written just for you.